Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. As you'll have probably noticed, for the last couple of weeks I've been a little bit quiet, and that's because we've had a new addition to the family. My daughter Ren has just been born, making that 5 kids in total now. So as you can imagine, I've been pretty busy. YouTube is grueling. This is my full-time job, and you actually don't get any breaks, pretty much no time off. I never get a week or two off. So having a baby actually gives me the excuse to have some time off work, and believe it or not, it has felt like a break as well. But now it's time to get back into it, and the first video I'm giving you guys is an update on those fish I rescued. But before we take a look at the fish, we're going to have to go back to where it all began. So back in October last year, we had some of the worst flooding in probably over 10 years in the local area. It was really bad. The fields absolutely full of water, and this meant that fish were carried into them from fisheries and from the river itself, and they became stranded and landlocked. And over the next few months, the water gradually receded down enough for these fish to become visible and to make themselves known to myself walking around these riverbanks. And I set myself the challenge of going and catching as many as I could do to rescue and move back to the river. Now I actually managed it. We managed to catch every single one, apart from one of the big carp, out of this water, including the stunning ghost carp, using stalking tactics and bread to move over into the river. But during the duration of this filming, I noticed lots of small fry and tiny fish moving around in the margins, meaning that either these fish had spawned in here or there was lots of smaller species of fish I just couldn't catch with rod and line. I decided I'd have to come back at a later date when the water had receded even more to be able to get in here and actually net the place using a fine mesh net to be able to catch all the smallest species of fish that could possibly be stranded, to rescue them, hopefully to either move onto the river, a pond, or maybe even a backyard pond. And it only took actually about a month of warm weather to get this puddle down to only about a foot deep. At this point, you could see all the fish dotting all over the surface. It was getting close to the point where this puddle was going to be dried up and these fish needed to be rescued. So over the course of 2 days, that's what I did. I came armed with a set of waders and a fine mesh carp landing net and proceeded to net the entire of the pond that seemed to have the most fish in. And we caught thousands upon thousands upon thousands of fish that I managed to rescue, most of which were actually small sticklebacks, which I think probably got washed in here and then bred and multiplied like mad over the course of the spring and summertime. Now all these stickleback got moved to the local dike, which was literally just a few yards away and actually connects to the river. So they can either choose to go into the river if they want to or stay in the dike. It was a perfect habitat for these fish. But some of the other species of fish that I managed to catch while netting the pond were small pike. Obviously I couldn't keep small pike to myself, so I let those ones go. But I also caught several little baby carp. Now I weren't quite sure at first what these were, but upon later inspection, there was lots of mirror carp, some potential ghost carp, and I think almost definitely some baby crucian carp as well, which were actually the biggest surprise of this entire rescue. I very rarely catch any crucian carp as it is, so to find so many baby ones stranded in the field, in the middle of a farmer's field, in the middle of nowhere, was actually quite shocking. Now I knew straight away that the small carp, the mirror carp, the common carp and the small baby crucians wouldn't fare well being dumped straight into the river system. They're way too small and they're not really built for fighting fast currents, so I decided it'd be better off to bring those fish home and actually try and rear them at home. Now I don't actually have a pond set up at home, so what I had to do is I got a couple of large garden vats, filled them with water, and I kept these fish. I had about 20 to 25 in total, and the aim was to keep them in there until I could get a bigger pond for these fish to move into. My girlfriend wasn't too keen on the idea. With my garden being relatively small and having 5 kids, 7 and under, I decided the best idea would actually to build a sort of secret pond. I needed a new shed anyway, so what I did is I bought myself a brand new metal shed and ordered a pond that I felt like would be big enough for these fish to live in for at least a couple of years, while also being hidden away in the shed, away from the kids and away from the missus. And things just kept going downhill from here. I put the shed up, it was absolutely fantastic, the perfect size, and my pond was ordered from Amazon. I didn't realise originally though, on the wait time, I had to wait up to a month for this pond to arrive. And yes, it did take about a month for it to arrive, so already I'd had these fish cooped up in these buckets for about a month. We'd had no fatalities, which was already a win. The pond arrived and it had no frame. This is supposed to be a raised pond with a clear front. All I got was the liner, nothing else. I contacted the seller. He said it would take another month to arrive. These were coming from China. And lo and behold, a month later on, we got the frame. That means these fish were being kept in these small vats in the garden for 2 months. We had 0 fatalities. It took a lot of water changes, a lot of looking after, but we managed to keep these fish alive that long. The pond frame went up nice and quick. I figured it'd be no time at all before we could get these fish moved in there. and into the bigger home. And we hit another hurdle. The pond liner was leaking. Every single seam of the pond was leaking water out. And at a relatively fast rate. Overnight you could see a pool of water underneath where the pond was. It was obviously leaking at a fast rate, and you could see down the seams almost like a condensation of the water building up. Now this actually took me a couple of weeks to figure out a fix. I tried using a pond safe paint to seal it. The paint that I bought and used was recommended. It never actually set. I had to flip the pond inside out. And then finally I bought 5 or 6 tubes of an actual aquarium sealant. It's what you use to like patch up aquariums and stuff. So it's fish safe stuff. And I used that to go around every single seam of the pond. It wasn't a neat process. It was just a process of slapping on as much as I could. I had 6 tubes to use up, slap it over the entire seam of the pond, entire of the base of the pond, just to make sure that no water escaped. And finally, after filling it up for the final time, it held and retained water. Now I have sped this process up a little bit. There was actually lots of trial and error, lots of filling it up in between, trying little ideas out to stop the leaking before eventually we got to this process. And at this point, I've had these fish in the buckets for probably about 3 months. Thankfully, absolutely no fatalities. Didn't find a single dead fish. And I think in total, I've got about 25 baby carp. After leaving the pond to sit for about a week with the filters running, making sure to get the healthy bacteria up in the pond, it was time to start transferring those fish finally from the small vats into the main pond within the shed. My son gave me a helping hand, and in between each one of the net loads we got from the bucket, we put them all into a small glass container so we could look at the fish, look at how nice some of the colours were, look at how big some of these fish have got. Even though they was in small containers, each one of these baby fish has grown probably at least a centimetre or 2 while they've been in there. And it was time to move them to their new home. Some of these carp were really nice looking. There were some that were almost fully scaled mirrors, some that were almost linears. The little baby Crucian carp looked in really good condition and definitely looked like Crucian carp to me. You'll have to give me your opinions. And putting them into that larger pond was finally a big sigh of relief. They all looked really healthy. Within a couple of hours, they was feeding on the pellets I was feeding them, and the fish look in great condition. And that brings us to where we are now. Yes, I'm currently in my shed. Yes, that is my play button that is wonky. And this is the pond where these fish will be spending a good amount of their time. Now I've not quite worked it out how many gallons this is, but I'll put it in this corner right here once I work it out. But this will be big enough for these fish at least for another year or 2 anyway. So in total there's actually I think 25 fish. I think maybe 5 or 6 are small Crucians, and the rest of the fish are small baby mirror and ghost carp. Some of these have become more silvery in colour, some of these have actually become more golden in colour, which is really nice to see. And every single one of them is doing really well. I haven't had one single fatality in the last 2 or 3 months that I've had these fish now. I've been feeding them a mix of sinking pellets and floating pellets. This is all koi fry feed, so hopefully this will encourage the fish to grow healthily in here. Now the question is, where are these fish going to go when they get too big for this pond? Because obviously in a matter of maybe 2 years time, they will definitely be way too big for this thing, maybe even by next year. Well, the mirrors and ghosties that I believe I've got, I'll probably just find a new home for, either find them a new pond to go to, or maybe even a lake to go to. And when it comes to the Crucian carp, I'm actually going to keep them in here. Because I've only got 4 or 5, and this pond is actually a suitable size for these Crucians, they don't grow too big, I think I might keep them in here. What we're going to do is we're going to monitor the progress of these fish over the next year or so, and then when I move on the larger carp, what we're going to do is get another fish for this pond. I'm thinking maybe even a small perch or pike. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you've liked it, don't forget to like the video. If you want to follow these fish and follow the pond, because I'll be giving regular updates, and next year I'll do a whole year recap to see how fast they've grown from the time we got them from that muddy pond to now. They've already grown probably a good couple of centimetres each, I would say, some of these fish. Some of them have grown quite a bit to say they've been in small tubs. So if you want to follow that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you liked it, and I'll catch you guys later.